Ryuichi and his baby brother Kotaro lose their parents in a plane crash and get scooped up by a rich lady who also lost her kid in the same mess. Sounds touching, but her kindness comes with a fat price tag cause there are no free lunches in this world. She dumps Ryuichi, this unlucky dude, into her busted daycare to babysit screaming gremlins, wipe nasty little butts, and toss out diapers that smell like death. Welcome to the Babysitter's Club, where your dignity goes straight in the trash with the Pampers. Kotaro is a 2-year-old and Ryu's baby brother. Today, they lose their parents in a tragic plane crash. They're on their way to meet the school chairwoman, who also loses her children in the same crash and now wants to adopt the two brothers. As they enter, the chairwoman questions their lateness, having waited since morning. Kotaro casually calls her Shaggy, and Ryu quickly covers his little brother's mouth and apologizes. The chairwoman lays out her condition. Ryu must work part-time as a babysitter at her school in exchange for living with her. Later, Seikawa escorts them to the daycare where a bunch of kids are playing. Seikawa explains that the Babysitter Club was originally started by the chairwoman's son, but since no one joined, it never took off. Ryu, now the first official member, promises to give his all for the club. Seikawa, moved by Ryu's resolve, wipes his eyes and wishes him luck before heading off. Ryu opens the daycare door. The kids freeze, eyes wide. Then, in a blink, they rush to Seikawa and hide behind him. One of the kids tugs on the ear of their sleeping caretaker, waking him up. The man, stretching and yawning, introduces himself as the only caretaker so far and a former school graduate. The kids instantly ask if they can play with the newcomers. Uzeda, the caretaker, tells them to introduce themselves first. They shout out their names all at once. He lines them up: Karen, Taka, Takuma, Kazuma, and Baby Midori. Kotaro gets gently set down among them. Taka suddenly yells Monster Kotaro, and the kids charge like a tiny army. Ryu throws himself into the chaos, declaring himself the monster instead. The kids swarm him with toy swords and jiggly pokes. Kotaro tries to help his brother, but ends up getting pushed back. Ryu reassures him with a glance, silently telling him to just go play. He's got this. Kotaro clutches a book and quietly watches from the sidelines. Uzeda crouches beside him and asks if he wants his brother back. Kotaro nods. Uzeda offers to read, but Kotaro shakes his head. With a small pat, Uzeda says Ryu won't notice unless he calls out. Before leaving, Uzeda hands Ryu the baby Midori and asks if he can handle things from here. Ryu gives a confident nod. As Uzeda walks away, one thought lingers. He would have stayed if someone had just asked. Ryu changes Midori's diaper when Taka suddenly attacks him out of nowhere. Karen steps in and offers food, asking if anyone's hungry. She pulls Midori along, declaring herself the mama and Midori the baby. Ryu quickly stops her, warning her that dragging a baby around is dangerous. Chaos breaks out as the twins dash right through the food she made. Kazuma trips and nearly bursts into tears, but Ryu scoops him up just in time. Takuma pats his brother gently, repeating the classic little chant about pain flying away. Kazuma finally calms down. Karen looks devastated about the ruined food, but Ryu cheers her up with a smile and some kind words. Midori starts crying, and Ryu picks her up to soothe her. Taka climbs onto him again, tugging his ears like they're handlebars. Ryu glances over to check on Kotaro, who gives a small nod, pretending he's fine. But Taka keeps pulling Ryu's attention away, and Kotaro starts feeling left out. Soon, the mothers arrive, and the kids rush into their arms. Karen's mom wants to know who the heck Ryu is. He introduces himself, and so do they. Yukari turns out to be Midori's mom. Yumi belongs to the twins, and Yaoi is Karen's. Ryu gestures toward Kotaro and explains that he's his younger brother. Kotaro peeks up from his book just long enough to give a tiny glance as they wave goodbye. As Ryu heads back inside, Taka's older brother shows up. He calls out for Taka and eyes Ryu with suspicion. When Ryu explains that he's a third year and the new helper, the boy introduces himself as Hayato, also a third year and apparently from the same grade. He asks if Ryu is the transfer student, and Ryu nods, thinking Hayato looks kinda scary. But maybe not too bad. Taka doesn't want to leave. He refuses to go home, insisting he still wants to play with Ryu. Hayato snaps and hits him, causing Taka to cry. Ryu steps in and tells Hayato not to hit his little brother. Hayato fires back, telling Ryu to stop ignoring his own lonely brother. Hayato leaves with Taka, while Ryu turns to check on Kotaro again. Kotaro doesn't say a word. He just collapses into Ryu's lap, breathing heavily. Ryu panics and asks Hayato for help, and the two rush him to the hospital. Guilt tears at Ryu the whole way there. Why did he leave him alone? At the hospital, the doctor says Kotaro's burning up from stress, but should recover with some rest. The nurse tells Ryu he can take him home once he wakes up. Outside the hospital, Ryu pulls out his phone and tries calling his parents. Then it hits him. No one's going to answer. He breaks down, crushed by the weight of reality. The chairwoman finds him and gently comforts him, reminding him they aren't alone. Ryu breaks down further, right as the nurse walks out with the crying Kotaro. Ryu hugs him tight, calling him an idiot for not calling out earlier. Deep inside, he wonders if Kotaro even understands their parents are gone. That night, the chairwoman tucks them both in. Ryu silently tears up, clinging to one thought: no one is truly alone. The next day, the chairwoman notices some shabby flowers and asks about them. Seikowa casually mentions that Ryu and Kotaro picked them out. She blushes slightly and changes the subject, pretending it's no big deal. Later, the teacher asks Ryu to introduce himself to the class. He stutters at first, nerves bubbling up, but when he spots Hayato among the students, he straightens up and finds his voice, confidently introducing himself. Back at daycare, Taka invites Kotaro to read his favorite book. Kotaro quietly nods, and the other kids flash warm smiles his way. A little later, Ryu reads Power Rangers to the group. Taka immediately claims the Red Ranger, but Takuma and Kazuma both want the same one. Kirin claims the Pink Ranger without hesitation. Meanwhile, Usaida snoozes off in a corner, still holding Midori in his arms like a sleepy dad at nap time. The next day, Ryu wakes up with Kotaro lying on his chest. He sits up slowly, hugs him, and remembers they are no longer with their parents. The old hag storms in, shouting at them to get ready for school. Seikowa says breakfast and lunch are ready while the old hag keeps ranting. Kotaro calls her Shaggy. She warns him that if he says it again, he's getting the same haircut. Seikowa finds it amusing. She gives Ryu a school uniform and explains he's going to her academy. Ryu nods as she walks out. At daycare, Kotaro takes off his shoes. Usaida is shocked that the cheapskate hag actually got Ryu a uniform. Ryu tells Kotaro he's heading to class and will return at lunch. As he walks into the school, students stare. Ryu feels awkward, and Hayato explains it's because he brought kids. Ryu asks what Hayato is doing there. Taka says Kotaro followed him in. Kotaro hugs Ryu tightly, and other kids ask to play too, making Ryu even more embarrassed. Hayato tells them to stop, and Taka runs off, calling his brother a poopy head. He crashes into Fierce Girl, who scolds everyone. The kids cling to Ryu in fear. He apologizes and brings them back to daycare. Inomata, the top student, gives Ryu a cold look and walks away without saying anything. Back at daycare, Usaida sleeps on the job. Hayato wakes him. Ryu pats his sad Kotaro's head to lift his mood. Inomata shows up with lunch from Taka's mom, who's a teacher. The kids tremble as she walks in. As she turns to leave, Usaida groans in pain and asks Hayato to help him to the nurse's office. He insists he can go alone, but Inomata stays behind. The kids hide behind Ryu, keeping their distance from her. Later, Inomata offers to hold sleeping Midori. Midori wakes up crying from her voice. Taka pokes Inomata, and the kids call her a villain. She snaps, asking who's calling her that. Ryu sees her eyes tear up and tells the kids to apologize. She doesn't accept their half-hearted words and feels sorry for Ryu. He smiles and says they're not a burden. She smacks him with a pillow and tells him to stop smiling like that. She throws toys while crying, saying no one likes her, except the kids. Kirin gives her a hug, and the children finally apologize. She falls asleep beside them. Later, Kotaro stares at his tiger sweater. Ryu asks why. Kotaro says Taka made fun of it. Taka says he was just telling the truth. Hayato scolds him, and Taka runs to Usaida, crying and yelling that he hates his brother. Hayato picks him up and takes him home. Ryu suggests taking Kotaro to the zoo. Usaida agrees and decides to work weekends to get paid. During dinner, Ryu asks the chairwoman for permission. She agrees but refuses to pay for Usaida since the mothers are going. Ryu invites her, but she turns him down and says the zoo stinks. On the day of the trip, Seikowa gives Ryu lunch and some money. Ryu offers to pay Usaida, but secretly plans to sell photos to the kids' dads. Hayato drops off Taka and leaves for practice. At the zoo, the kids go wild seeing the elephant. Usaida takes pictures. A tiger roars, and the kids run to Usaida except Kotaro, who stays and stares at it. Ryu picks him up, realizing Kotaro would totally get eaten in the wild. They visit the tiger cubs, then Usaida calls for lunch. Ryu sees Kotaro watching a family and thinks about his own parents. Usaida yells at him to catch up. The moms praise Seikowa's lunch. After eating, Usaida snaps photos of the kids with rabbits. Kotaro sees a sheep and calls it Shaggy, just like the chairwoman. Ryu and Kotaro get scolded while Usaida takes another picture. Taka brags that his name means hawk, and Ryu says Hayato shares his name with the falcon Hayabusa. Taka refuses to admit Hayato is his brother. At the toy shop, the kids beg for souvenirs. Kotaro wants a keychain like the chairwoman's. Ryu takes him to pay, leaving Taka with Usaida. Usaida offers Taka a gift, but Taka says no. Then he spots someone who looks like his brother and chases after him. The group notices he's gone. Taka finds out it's not Hayato, trips and starts crying for him. Hayato shows up, scolds him for crying, and Ryu feels relieved. Hayato smacks him and tells him to apologize. Ryu thanks him for coming. Hayato says his mom chewed him out for leaving Taka behind. Kotaro and Taka both fall asleep. Taka mumbles that he loves him and Hayato says he doesn't hate him. Ryu teases Hayato, saying he knows Hayato loves his brother. The next day, the daycare is lit with Valentine's Day vibes. The kids run wild and Yuseda suddenly remembers what's up. He calls the kids over, holding out his hands, but they just look at him, confused. Kotaro makes down for Yuseda's chocolates. He's all about the mom's gifts. The other kids quickly say they didn't bring anything. In class, the girls are whispering about Valentine's Day. One of them messes with Yuki, asking if she likes someone. Yuki just laughs it off, keeping it quiet. A boy asks Ryu if he got any chocolates. Ryu says no and Yuki feels a weight off her chest. Her little crush is still safe. Another girl tries to hand chocolates to Hayato. He turns her down, but the other boys jump in, all wanting them instead. Later, Yaji gets a bunch of chocolates from some girls. Inamada's not having it. Gifting is against the rules. The girls call her lame. Yaji doesn't care and asks if she knows about the babysitter club. Inamada's pissed but curious, wondering if the girls are right. She still worries the kids won't vibe with her if she changes too much. Yaji rolls up to the daycare, all excited to join the babysitter club. Ryu introduces him to the kids and Yaji's smooth with them. He calls out Karen's pigtails as Taka's cool and loves Midori's eyes. But some boys start saying Yaji's giving them a weird look. Inamada hears them and rushes in to see what's up. At the daycare, she sees Yaji poking Kotaro's cheek and Kotaro gets a nosebleed. The kids pull back from him. Nezu, Yaji's buddy, calls him out for being creepy. Yaji explains it's just too much chocolate that caused the nosebleed. After a tense moment, he backs down and says he won't join the club, but asks if he can still poke the kids' cheeks. Inamada's fired up now. She promises to bring chocolates for the kids the next day. Ryu buys chocolates for her and tells her it's cool if she gives them out off campus. Inamada blushes. Yuki, watching from the sidelines, wonders if they're a thing. At the daycare, Yuseda's handing out chocolates. Kotaro is quick to give Ryu's piece, asking him to eat it. Ryu smiles and eats it. The next day during gym, the kids are freezing. Yuseda rolls up, dragging them in a cart, saying it keeps them from running off. The kids complain, but Yuseda tells them a fake story about kidnappers scaring them. Ryu quickly shuts that down. The boys see Ryu all cozy with the kids and start fighting to get close to him, calling the kids heat packs. From a distance, a guy's watching. When a few boys try to grab Karen, Takuma calls for help. Ryu rushes over, yelling at the stranger. Hayato throws a shoe, hitting the guy square. To everyone's surprise, the man's Takuma's dad, Kosuke. Back at the daycare, Kosuke apologizes. He says he's an actor and feels embarrassed that his kids don't recognize him. It's his first day off in months, and he just wants to hang with his sons. Ryu tells him to stick around and bond, but Kazuma doesn't want to be held. Kosuke feels rejected and agrees to leave. As he walks off, a girl spots him and a crowd swarms, asking for autographs. Takuma and Kazuma yell for Kosuke to come back. Moved, Kosuke pushes through the crowd. His wife, who's a teacher, says she's been showing the twins his movies to help them connect with him. One of the movies, where he plays a kidnapper, scared Kazuma. Kosuke hugs his sons, tears in his eyes. Takuma and Kazuma are all smiles. Kotaro watches from the side, quietly seeing their bond, maybe feeling a little jealous. The next morning, cherry blossoms bloom as Ryu starts his first day of high school. He has to post his babysitter flyer, but it's already covered by flyers from other clubs. In the daycare room, the kids rush him, causing him to drop the flyer onto Kotaro's head. Kotaro doesn't remove it, and Yuseda reads it aloud. Ryu asks Kotaro to take it off before reading, and Yuseda suggests they explore other clubs. The twins agree, and Taka and Karen get excited to visit their brother's club. In the hallway, the kids start a parade, singing, dancing, and pretending to fart. Kotaro struggles with the rhythm, while Ryu feels embarrassed. Karen opens the drama club door, but gets scared when she sees her mom in zombie makeup. Her mom jokingly asks, "Don't recognize your own mom?" Ryu stops her, saying they're scared as the kids hide. Kotaro tugs at Ryu's pants, pointing to the kids running off. Ryu apologizes and calls Yuseda, who is also wearing scary makeup. The twins hug their mom and Ryu explains they're just exploring clubs. The kids smell something sweet and rush toward it with their mom following. Ryu stops to point out an ant, which Yuseda and Midori watch too. The kids find the cooking room, but the cookies aren't ready yet. Ryu asks if anyone has seen the kids running around, and the kids cheer when they reunite. Inamada scolds Ryu for not keeping an eye on the kids, then apologizes for scaring them. A girl reassures her to care about them. Ryu apologizes and tells the kids, "Let's go." Taka refuses, wanting sweets, so Ryu drags him away. To calm him down, Ryu suggests they visit the sports club. Taka eagerly watches Hayato practice, but Hayato quickly looks away, upsetting him. Hayato hits him, making Taka cry. Ryu feels left out. Kotaro notices Ryu's sadness and finds more ants. The kids ask where to next. Ryu says he needs to post the babysitter flyer. Kotaro refuses to go but later posts it himself, feeling hurt. Hayato appears with his application to join the babysitter club, saying Kotaro noticed Ryu was down. The kids return with cookies to cheer Ryu up, and he's touched. After club day, Uesada makes matching aprons for the boys. Inomata brings cookies, and Hayato jokes they might break a tooth. Inomata snaps, then don't eat them. The next morning, Ryu wakes up with Kotaro on his chest. The chairwoman walks in and scolds Ryu for staying in bed. Ryu struggles to get up, slipping around. Steikawa congratulates him on his voice change, but the chairwoman smacks him. She then takes Kotaro away, warning that if he catches a cold, it'll be double the trouble. Kotaro calls her Shaggy Chairwoman, and she asks if he means the blanket or her. She has Kotaro squeeze a lemon in the kitchen for Ryu's honey lemon remedy. Kotaro struggles but finally gets a drop in the cup. After spilling the juice, Kotaro tries again, and the chairwoman notices his determination. Later, she brings rice gruel and asks Steikawa about Ryu. He says Ryu's fever is better, so she lets him rest. Ryu dreams his parents are taking Kotaro away, scared he won't come back. He wakes up tearfully, and Kotaro wipes his tears away. The chairwoman tells Ryu his hands have lemon on them and hands him a cup with a hot drink, saying Kotaro made it. As Ryu drinks, he silently thanks God for not taking his brother. Kotaro smiles as Ryu pats his head and thanks him. The chairwoman lifts Kotaro, telling him he has to leave, confusing him. He thought his brother would be fine after the medicine. Ryu worries Kotaro might catch his cold, leaving him disappointed. Later, Kotaro sits under a chair, pouting. Steikawa tries to tempt him with ice cream, but it doesn't work and Kotaro stays upset. In the morning, Midori's mom leaves her with Ryu. He suggests Kotaro read a storybook while he changes Midori's diaper, but he realizes he's out of them. Midori crawls to the door just as a student opens it, causing a mess. The student trips over her, disgusted by the smell, and Ryu watches in shock. Later, Ryu and Kotaro talk. Kotaro calls Midori a poop factory, and Ryu defends her. Kotaro says he wants to see his future daughter and calls himself Inui-senpai. Ryu is confused, but Inui brushes it off, mentioning that love doesn't care about marriage. Ryu panics, thinking Inui might be after Midori's mom. Ryu asks Uesada about Midori's father, and Uesada says he's overseas. Ryu wonders if Midori's mom is cheating, but Uesada teases him about liking older women, which Ryu denies. In class, Ryu tells Hayato about the situation, but Hayato says it's none of their business. Ryu continues to think about love and memories of Yuki. He asks Inomata about cheating, and she says cheaters deserve punishment. He then asks if she's ever had a crush, which upsets her. Ryu returns to the daycare and sees the kids making a mess of Inui, while Kotaro stays focused on his Cinderella book. Ryu helps clean up, reminding the kids not to pick on the weak. Inui comments about Midori being the poop factory and bites Ryu's finger in frustration. The kids call Ryu weak too. Inui confesses his feelings for Midori's mom, explaining her husband is dead. Ryu argues it's wrong to pursue someone already with a family, but Inui insists he wants to support her. Midori's mom arrives to pick her up, and the kids call Inui boiled octopus as he nervously stumbles. Midori starts crying and her mom reassures her, mentioning her husband will be back soon from a dig in Turkey. Inui, embarrassed, offers to babysit Midori while her mom goes on dates. He sulks as the kids attack him with toy swords. Inui confronts Uesada, who admits he finds the situation amusing. Ryu jokes about Inui looking cool before her, and Inui laughs it off. Ryu then reads the pictured book to the kids, imagining Midori's family being reunited. The next day, things take a strange turn as Ryu becomes Dragon King, serving Demon Queen Midori. The Rangers 5 appear, but Kirin, who wants to study to become a witch, shocks everyone by refusing to play. Ryu is concerned about her changing so quickly, but Kirin is determined. The leader Taka would have gone along with things if Hayato hadn't said boys couldn't be witches. This sparks an argument between Taka and Kirin about heroes and witches. Ryu tries to keep their dreams alive, but the kids fight. Kotaro tries to help but gets shoved. The next day, Taka brings a photo with a Red Ranger, claiming Rangers are real, and accuses Kirin of having no evidence for witches. Kirin holds up her witch's book, determined to prove witches exist by flying. She tries, but Uesada thinks it won't work. Taka insists witches don't exist, but Kirin refuses to give up. Ryu worries for her. Ryu talks to Hayato, who suggests telling Kirin the truth. Ryu wants to preserve their dreams. Inomata shows up, offering help and bringing books with witch evidence. Ryu worries about scaring the kids, but Inomata apologizes and leaves. Yuki wonders about Ryu's relationship with Inomata, while Ryu thinks she's strange but kind. He briefly imagines asking the chairwoman to pretend to be a witch, but she scolds him to study. Usaida asks Kirin to return inside, but she's determined to fly. He agrees as long as she doesn't jump off anything. Holding Kirin's witch book, Kotaro asks Usaida to read it to him, drawing the twins' attention. Meanwhile, Kirin spots a ledge from which she can jump. Carrying magic trick books, Ryu heads to the daycare to support Kirin, but sees her about to jump. He rushes to break her fall, and she sobs, crushed that her dream has been shattered. Ryu regrets not telling her the truth that witches are only in storybooks, as Hayato had said. The chairwoman appears and asks why Kirin is crying. Kirin explains she couldn't fly. The chairwoman responds that she needs 100 years of practice and leaves the idea of flying on a broom to Kirin's imagination. The kids are amazed by this. Inside, Taka suggests they play witches too, and Kirin smiles. For a moment, Ryu believes the chairwoman might actually be a witch. Nezu's brother, Kichi, yells at their father and runs off. Meanwhile, Ryu hangs laundry while Kotaro follows ants but suddenly stops. Kotaro tugs on Ryu's pants, pulling him to a bush where Kichi is stuck. Ryu thinks it's Nezu and offers help, but Kichi slaps his hand away, saying he doesn't need his help. Ryu reassures Kotaro, telling him he's not hurt. Ryu asks if Kichi is Nezu's brother, but Kichi stays quiet. Therefore, Ryu continues with his laundry, telling Kichi to call if he wants to talk. Kotaro panics as Yaji comes near, squeezes Kotaro's cheeks, and causes a nosebleed. Inomena warns Yaji, saying she'll call the police if he doesn't stop touching him. However, Yaji jokes back, making Inomena angry. Ryu explains that he called Yaji because he had his number. Yaji says Nezu is working, so he came instead. Nezu's family is poor with 8 kids. Nezu's siblings praise him for supporting the family. Yaji ruffles Kichi's hair, but Kichi yells at him to leave him alone. Inomata scolds Kichi for running away over a video game, but Kichi cries and says he wishes he were rich. Spoofy interrupts, defending Kichi's desire for a game and accusing Yaji of bothering him. Stue explains that games matter to Kichi because he's the only one in his class without one, and his best friend is pressuring him to buy it, even though they're poor. Yaji remembers when Nezu refused a game offer, saying he would make his own because they were poor. Kichi admires his brother's work ethic and asks Ryu to help him out of the bush. They both fall, but Ryu reassures him. Yaji tries to play but gets kicked by Sui. Kichi and Nezu promise to try to be like Nezu. Nezu arrives to apologize to Kichi and offers sweets to Ryu and Inomata. Kichi apologizes and Nezu forgives him, giving him the game he wanted. Tsukishi asks if Nezu made it, and Nezu says he got it cheap after taking over a colleague's shift, adding that Yaji exaggerated. Nezu kicks Yaji's leg, whispering that half of what he said earlier was a bluff. Nezu tells Kichi to share the game with Tsukichi and pats him. Ryu thanks Inomata, making her blush. The next day, Uzaida plays with the kids and mentions that Ryu won't join them for lunch. Later, Uzaida notices Ryu has forgotten his lunchbox and plans to eat it, but instead he gives it to Kotaro, who wants to deliver it. Uzaida attaches a tag to Kotaro in case he gets lost. Kotaro sets off while Uzaida watches, still worried. Meanwhile, Inui watches as Midori mimics him, and a photo of Midori's mom appears before him. Inui realizes it's a trap. Kotaro walks down the hallway, catching people's attention. Some students offer to help, but he turns them down, determined to go alone. They admire his effort. Inui watches and wonders how he ended up babysitting. Uzaida promised him a photo in exchange. Meanwhile, Kotaro struggles up the stairs. In class, Ryu realizes he's forgotten his lunch. Yuki offers hers, but Ryu points out that dieting isn't healthy. The boys offer their lunches, and Ryu sarcastically says it's nice to have such caring classmates. At the daycare, the kids nap while Uzaida plans to tell Ryu that Kotaro is on the way but falls asleep instead. Meanwhile, Inui watches Kotaro struggle halfway up the stairs. After being kicked in the face by another kid, the lunchbox flies, but Inui, wearing a paper bag, catches it and hands it back to Kotaro. Kotaro thanks him, calling him Masked Man. Inui blushes and stays with him, guiding him past other students. Once Ryu finishes his assignment, Kotaro finally arrives with the lunchbox. Ryu is surprised and asks, "Did you bring this yourself?" Kotaro nods. Ryu quickly eats some bread, telling the boys he's hungry. He thanks Kotaro and invites him to eat together. The boys are touched, and Yuki's friend jokes that Kotaro is his real rival, making Yuki blush. Ryu opens the lunchbox to find a mess inside. He feeds Kotaro some rice and praises him for completing his first errand. Nezu, watching from a distance, is touched by the sibling bond and hands him a handkerchief, causing Nezu to freak out at his sudden appearance. The next day, the girls ask Yuki what she likes about Ryu. She blushes and asks them to be quiet, worried he might hear. Meanwhile, the boys listen with jealousy. The girls reassure her, saying Ryu isn't there, and Yuki admits her feelings. One girl mentions Ryu's kind and good-looking personality, which surprises Yuki. Another girl remembers when Ryu picks up her eraser. Someone else brings up Hayato, calling him hot, though another girl notes he's a little scary. Another girl says that is part of his charm, especially since he helps babysit Q. Yuki is overwhelmed by Ryu's popularity, but the girls assure her they aren't rivals. Yuki blushes, saying they don't have to hold back. The girls joke that her competition is Ryu's baby brother since he'll never prioritize anyone else. One of them even mentions Ryu's closeness with Inomata and wonders if he likes her. Inomata walks by and another girl comments that Inomata is focused on studies, not romance. Inomata then glares at them and Ryu appears, flustered. Inomata scolds the girls and walks off, leaving the boys to comment on how scary she is while Ryu is shocked. He realizes he is still wearing his apron and Hayato points out the stickers on his back. Ryu turns red and asks why Hayato doesn't say anything. The girl calls him cute, confusing the boys. Meanwhile, the kids put stickers on a sleeping Usaida. Inomata regrets yelling at the girls and feels flustered by Ryu. She recalls his Valentine's Day compliment, blushing. Karen cries and Inomata wonders why the kids are wandering. Karen explains they come to play, leaving a note with Usaida. Inomata tells them to return, but Karen asks if Inomata hates them for not playing. Inomata denies it, saying she can't come because Ryu is there. Karen wonders if it's Ryu or Hayato and decides to show Ryu's good side by taking Kotaro's hand. Inomata awkwardly waits near Ryu's classroom. Karen points out Ryu's caring side, but Inomata thinks he is overindulgent. Karen teases that she likes strict men, then runs in and asks Ryu to hit her. Hayato hits her first and she cries in Ryu's arms. Inomata later admits she doesn't hate Ryu, but denies liking him and storms off. Ryu grabs her wrist, pointing out a sticker she has. Karen proudly admits putting it on her. Inomata walks away thinking about Karen's question. Karen reassures Ryu and Usaida asks if he is a good person. Karen says Usaida is terrible. Kosuke arrives at daycare the following day with Takuma, who takes his glasses. Ryu asks about Kazuma and Takuma says he is sick. Kazuma calls for Takuma at home and his mother comforts him with medicine. Takuma says he is fine, but Kosuke sees through his smile. Usaida bets Takuma is okay and Takuma confirms he isn't lonely. His bravery touches Kosuke. When Takuma enters, he runs to Hayato, making Kosuke tear up. Ryu calls Takuma to say goodbye and the kids wave while Usaida calls him shady. Later, Taka pulls Kotaro away from Takuma, starting a tug of war. Hayato hits Taka, who cries, asking about Kazuma. Ryu explains Kazuma is sick. Taka holds Takuma's hand, saying he'll beat the cold, and Takuma agrees. They all run to Usaida, attacking him. Usaida asks Ryu for help, but Ryu says he is leaving for class. Usaida falls, calling himself weak as the kids mock him. Ryu worries about Takuma, concerned that he might struggle without Kazuma despite his cheerfulness. Kato agrees, thinking Kazuma is probably crying alone. Ryu reflects on their different personalities. Kazuma is teary, while Takuma is upbeat. He mutters that he never wants them apart, and Yuki wonders what he means. During nap time, Takuma wakes up and searches for Kazuma, grabbing Taka's sock. He remembers Kazuma and looks around for him. Taka's foot hits Kotaro, waking him up. Kotaro sees Takuma leaving and runs to tell Ryu. Ryu rushes to the daycare but trips when he spots Kotaro pointing to where Takuma has gone. At the school gate, two girls notice Takuma and ask about him. Ryu asks what they are doing and Takuma asks if Kazuma is better. Ryu assures him that Kazuma is likely improving. Takuma looks down sadly. Yuna arrives with Kazuma, whose fever is down. Kazuma cries and reaches for Takuma, who starts crying too. Their mom comforts them, praising Takuma for being brave and saying Kazuma got better because he kept his promise. Usaida comments that it is unusual for Takuma to cry and Kazuma to laugh. The twins wave goodbye, holding hands. Ryu believes twins are better together. Later, Kosuke rushes to pick up Takuma, but Usaida says he has already left. The next day, Ryu finds a letter in his locker. Yukawa teases him, asking if it's a love letter, causing a scene. Yuki's friend wonders if she put it there, but Yuki denies it. Hayato tries to take the letter, but Ryu blushes and says he'll check it himself. Inomata steps in, asking them not to block the way. She reads the letter aloud, revealing a confession from a girl who loves Ryu. Yuki and Inomata are surprised. The letter says she'll be waiting behind the school building. Ryu, embarrassed, says he needs time to think. Hayato points out that Ryu is still in indoor shoes. At daycare, the kids notice Ryu's red face. Usaida asks if he's sick, but Ryu realizes he's just out of breath. His baby brother brings him a blanket and pats him, saying he's fine. Ryu spends the day distracted, dropping baby powder and holding a book upside down. During dinner, Seikawa congratulates him, but Ryu denies it, confusing the chairwoman. He changes the subject to the red rice. Later, Kotaro offers a storybook, noticing Ryu is distant. Ryu tucks him in, still lost in thought. The next day, Ryu is on his way to school, still thinking about the confession. He looks at an orange tree, letting go of Ryu's hand and running off. At the same time, Inamata convinces herself that she left early to study and not to spy on Ryu. Yuki also leaves early to see what Ryu will say to the confessed girl. They run into each other, but before they can talk, Ryu suddenly grabs Inamata's hand, panting. He asks if they've seen Kotaro as he got distracted and lost him. Inamata hasn't seen him, so Ryu runs off to find him and both girls offer to help. After searching without success, Ryu panics. Just then, he hears Hayato's voice and sees Kotaro holding an orange. Hayato explains that Kotaro wandered into someone's yard to pick it up for Ryu, calling it lemon medicine for his cold. Ryu, touched by Kotaro's care, remembers how his baby brother made him lemon juice when he was sick. He gets emotional, kneels, and sheds a tear, grateful for his brother's concern. Later, Ryu apologizes to the confessed girl and gently rejects her. She accepts his decision sadly, and Hayato, who overheard, asks why he denied her. Ryu replies that Kotaro is his top priority at the time. At daycare, Kotaro argues with Usaida, calling an orange a lemon. Meanwhile, Yuki and Inamata, who had been spying on Ryu, feel relieved that he didn't accept the proposal. Yuki asks Inamata if they can be friends and calls her Maria-chan. Inamata blushes, embarrassed by the nickname. Sakawa answers the phone, and all he hears is heavy breathing. Hayato, frustrated, hits Taka and demands he share his name. Taka, upset it isn't Ryu, begs Hayato to ask for Ryu and Kotaro. He takes the phone and asks for Ryu. Ryu answers, holding Kotaro, and Taka invites him to the festival. Ryu asks the chairwoman for permission, which she grants. She warns them about vendors. At the festival, Taka waves a toy sword. Hayato tells him to stop. Ryu apologizes for making Hayato wait. They head to the stalls, and Kotaro watches the cotton candy being made. Taka eats his immediately, while Kotaro saves his. Taka spots a toy booth with the hero belt. Ryu and Hayato redirect them to food. They realize the lottery toys, especially the expensive game system, are disconnected from the strings. Taka cries, waving his cotton candy stick. Usaida waves from a goldfish booth. Ryu asks what he's doing there, and Usaida replies that it's his neighbor's part-time job. Noticing Taka crying, Usaida asks why. Taka sniffles, saying he wants to play that game. Usaida offers scoopers at a discount, making Taka cheer up briefly, but Taka demands string pulls instead. Hayato snaps, telling him to be quiet or he'll leave him there. Taka panics when his sword goes missing. Usaida and Ryu deny having it. Realizing its loss, Taka balls until Hayato smacks him. Ryu promises to help. Hayato stays silent, muttering that he wouldn't bother if Taka weren't his brother. Taka cries harder and Ryu glares. They check stalls, then head to the lost and found. Yoji, surrounded by girls, runs the booth. At Taka's tearful plea, Yoji's nose bleeds. Nezu shrugs, saying it's normal. There's no sword in the box. Taka collapses in despair. Hayato says they searched enough and should quit. Taka refuses, so Hayato tells him to keep looking alone. Ryu protests, but Hayato snaps, telling him to shut up. He gives Taka a choice: keep searching or join the lottery game, but reminds him to thank Ryu first. Taka hesitates, then sighs in defeat. They head to the lottery game. As Taka agonizes over which string to pick, Hayato barks at him to just pull one. Ryu interjects, telling him to chill and let Taka think. Suddenly, Kotaro yanks his string and Taka's sword pops out. Overjoyed, Taka hugs it. Hayato glares at the booth attendant, who admits to stealing the sword and offers a game as an apology. They gift it to an old woman while Kotaro pouts at his flattened cotton candy. The group heads to the beach. First, Midori, Taka, and Takuma play, while Karen and Kazuma cry and Kotaro sulks. Ryu watches them until Usaida shows up. Usaida points out the contrast between Team Fun and Team Misery. Ryu notices that Usaida isn't swimming, and Usaida explains he's there for the view and naps. Suddenly, Karen's mom appears, startling Ryu. The moms take over the kids' duties, telling Ryu to relax. Later, Inamata arrives late wearing her school swimsuit. Usaida teases her and Shizuka smacks him. Inamata can't refuse when Shizuka insists on buying her a proper swimsuit. Meanwhile, Usaida encourages Ryu to swim, but Ryu hesitates, saying Kotaro is scared. Usaida tests this theory by dunking Kazuma, who screams. Ryu carefully carries Kotaro into the water, but then a wave crashes over them. They come out soaked, and Kotaro is terrified. Usaida smirks, saying it wasn't convincing. As a result, Ryu suggests building sandcastles, and the kids cheer. While the twins build a sand mountain, Taka digs a hole and throws sand at a grumbling Usaida. Kotaro quietly piles sand nearby. Ryu smiles at their fun until the waves destroy their creations, making Taka cry. Then the moms bring juice to calm the kids. Unexpectedly, Hayato suddenly appears, startling everyone. Kotaro drops his drink, and Hayato offers seaweed as an apology, earning a smack from Shizuka. As a result, Ryu gives Kotaro his juice instead. Afterward, Inamata returns in a pink floral bikini. Hayato shrugs, saying it's just a swimsuit, and Ryu adds that the pattern matches Kirin's float, confusing everyone. Shizuka sighs, saying her son is hopeless. Noticing Kotaro sitting on rough gravel, Ryu moves him, letting the waves touch their feet. He suggests collecting shells, impressed by Kotaro's bravery. Later, when the kids nap, the moms urge Ryu to swim. Hayato drags him in, teasing him if he can swim. Ryu admits he didn't want to leave Kotaro, who wasn't scared as a baby but might need reassurance now. Hayato shoves him underwater, telling him to stop overthinking. Ryu realizes Kotaro wasn't scared as a baby because he didn't know better. Meanwhile, Yukari notices Kotaro awake and looking for Ryu. Just as Ryu dives under, Kotaro runs toward the waves but freezes, remembering Ryu protecting him earlier. He steps in, terrified, but Yukari pulls him back as he cries for Ryu. When Ryu surfaces, chaos ensues. He sees Kotaro sobbing on shore. As a result, Ryu rushes over, asking what's wrong. Kotaro murmurs that he's sorry for leaving Ryu. Yukari explains that Kotaro saw Ryu dive and panicked, trying to follow despite his fear. Kotaro clings to Ryu, calming down as his brother offers him a shell. Ryu adjusts it when Kotaro holds it upside down, smiling. Ryu tells Kotaro that next time he might love the sea. Meanwhile, Taka sniffles into Ryu's arms, unable to speak clearly. Shizuka holds up a scribbled baseball that Taka drew poop on. Ryu goes pale, imagining Hayato's anger, but Shizuka clarifies that Hayato just stared at it. Taka teased Hayato for ignoring him, expecting a hit, but Hayato walked away like nothing happened. Later, Hayato ignores Taka and leaves for school without him. Taka cries and Shizuka asks what's wrong. Ryu mutters that Hayato must be mad. Taka wails that it's Hayato's fault, so he won't apologize. Shizuka tells Ryu to talk to Hayato, or he'll keep ignoring Taka. Ryu protests, saying that Shizuka has supplementary classes and Usaida isn't there to help. Just then, the chairwoman enters. She says she will watch the kids, urging them to leave since she can't stand Taka's crying. As they leave, Kotaro calls the chairwoman Shaggy. She glares at Taka, but kneels to help him blow his nose. Meanwhile, Ryu goes to the baseball club, where a member warns him not to approach Hayato. He sees Hayato angrily swinging his bat, but calls out anyway. Ryu tells Hayato that if he doesn't forgive Taka, he'll whine all day. Ryu relates by remembering how Kotaro wrecked his stuff too. He pats Hayato's back and adds that since it was an accident, he moved on. Hayato scowls, saying Taka's different and malicious. However, he admits he'll suck it up. Meanwhile, the chairwoman listens as Taka sniffles, blaming Hayato. She asks if he treasures anything, and he shows her his toy sword. She grabs it and orders him to fetch a hammer. Taka panics, begging her to stop. She lowers it, telling him that's what he did to his brother. She asks if he did nothing wrong. Taka hesitates. When Ryu returns, the chairwoman announces they'll leave after school. Ryu asks Taka if he'll apologize, and surprisingly, Taka nods. At the baseball field, Taka hides behind Ryu. Hayato glares and turns away, but Taka sprints after him, slipping and falling. Hayato grumbles that Taka is an idiot and tells him to hurry up. Taka runs to him, sobbing, and says sorry. Hayato gives Taka a light smack on the head and ruffles his hair, apologizing too. He admits he should have spent more time with Taka. Ryu smiles as the brothers make up, and Kotaro tightly holds Ryu's finger. 10. At Morinomiya Academy's cultural festival, the daycare sets up a refreshment stand with the babies helping out. Ryu's flyer warns guests about spills, but Usaida thinks it might scare customers. Then, chaos erupts when Kotaro slips on juice, knocking into Taka, who bumps into Kazuma and Takuma, sending juice everywhere. The kids lay dazed in their vegetable costumes, made by Usaida, while Ryu stands awkwardly in a giant corn cob outfit. Usaida mentions that the kids' fathers are coming today, and Kirin cheers about her papa arriving. Just then, her mom appears, startling Ryu so badly he collapses. Taka tries to help by rolling Ryu, but Kotaro joins in, turning it into a game. Usaida snaps a photo and Kato arrives, rumbling about the corn blocking the door before realizing it's Ryu. Later, Kirin's mom apologizes for not staying because of work, but promises Kirin's dad will come. She whispers a favor to Ryu and the others. Nearby, a man, likely Yayui's husband, flirts with two girls while asking for directions. Yayui sulks because Midori's mom isn't there. A bearded man interrupts, demanding to be led to the daycare. Meanwhile, the twins' actor dad hides in bushes, dodging fangirls. Kirin's father bursts in, snapping endless photos of her in her carrot costume, gushing about how cute she is. He blushes as her husband hands her a bouquet and leans in for a kiss, but she stops him just in time. Then his eyes narrow the babysitters. Karen's mom warned them her husband is paranoid about boys near their daughter, so now Ryu and the others must pretend to be girls. Yuzeta tries a high-pitched girl voice, but Karen's dad sees through it instantly. Furious, he demands to know why male babysitters are present only to realize Yeyu has already left. He scans the room, offended, and asks if all the kids are boys. Midori then bites his leg and Karen points out she's not a boy. Karen's dad picks Midori up, charmed by his cuteness, and apologizes, mentioning how he'd propose if he were 30 years younger. Ryu and Yuzeta exchange uneasy glances as his focus shifts back to the boys. He demands they state their intentions toward his daughter. The kids chorus that they like Karen, except for Taka, who mutters he doesn't. Karen pouts and asks what kind of jerk doesn't like her, causing her dad to roar in anger. Declaring the room full of beast men, he tries to leave. Ryu steps in, his wig askew but somehow looking convincing. Karen's dad clasps his hand and says, "If I were 15 years younger." Before Ryu can confess, Midori yanks off his wig, shouting that males are unacceptable, and storms off. Ryu signals Hayato, who blocks the door. "Leave alone if you want," he says. Karen's dad's anger falters until he realizes Hayato is also a boy. Karen tugs on his sleeve, teary-eyed, asking him to stay and watch her carry juice. Defeated, her dad caves in. Later, Midori's dad arrives to reclaim his daughter. The two men exchange pleasantries while she sidles up to Ryu, asking if Yukari left her for this bearded guy. Yuzeta sneaks to reattach Ryu's wig, and Nide blushes, apologizing for his mistake and calling Ryu cute. Parents flood in, and Yukari asks Inui if he's there for the refreshments. He lies, saying he's just guiding her husband, and bolts outside, musing that the girl was cute. Karen triumphantly delivers her juice without spilling, and her dad sniffles, saying she's growing up too fast. He adds that soon some jerk will steal her away, causing the other dads to weep in solidarity. Ryu sighs, thinking it's too early for this. Karen announces it's Kotaro's turn. Her dad scowls and asks who Kotaro is. Ryu watches as his baby brother carefully carries the juice, spilling a little but succeeding. Ryu smiles, realizing Kotaro is growing up so fast. Kotaro appears, startling Ryu, and says the chairwoman couldn't come because she has a visitor. Saikawa adds that she looked regretful. Ryu imagines her scolding him for assuming her feelings. Karen's dad suggests a group photo, proudly saying that he takes great pictures. Karen beams as her dad lines everyone up while the moms chat with their kids. Taka grumbles that he isn't looking, while the tomato twins chirp that they will. Midori wails and Karen smiles sweetly. Then the moment is captured with a click. Ryu tries calming Taka, who's crying after Hayato whacks him. The other kids tremble as Hayato growls, "Listen, or you'll get hit too." Their mom storms in, smacking Hayato for threatening the kids and then whacking Yuzeta for napping. Hayato blinks and asks why she's here. She responds, saying it's for the science lab event where chicks are hatching tomorrow. The kids' eyes light up as they bolt for the door. She yells for them to wait until tomorrow. Ryu dreams of chicks imprinting on him, and Hayato scoffs, saying the chicks already follow Ryu everywhere. Ryu nods as the kids beg to see the eggs now. In the lab, they peer at the incubator. Karen pouts, saying it's just a fridge. Ryu explains, but the kids call him a liar. Shizuka abandons him for class, so Hayato raises a fist demanding they listen. The kids cling to Ryu, who patiently explains that the incubator keeps the eggs warm and that the chicks will hatch tomorrow if they wait. Yuzeta comments that staring at eggs is boring but notes that Kotaro could do it all day. Ryu notices Kotaro's tiny forehead pressed against the incubator glass. He picks him up and suggests they come back tomorrow. Meanwhile, Yuzeta finds the kids dismantling a body model. The next morning, Kotaro drags Ryu to the lab, eagerly pointing at the incubator. Shizuka remarks that passionate students are always welcome, just in time for the chicks to start hatching. Ryu and Kotaro watch, rapt, while Shizuka smiles at the excitement, even though her sons are still sleeping. An hour later, Shizuka dozes off, but Kotaro stays glued to the incubator. The chick's wing pokes out, and Ryu wakes to see Kotaro's forehead steaming with concentration, stifling his laughter at Kotaro's struggle. The chicks finally emerge, and Kotaro points at one, but it collapses. Shizuka explains that it's resting after the effort. Kotaro hugs his brother, overwhelmed by emotion. Ryu remembers his feelings when Kotaro was born and murmurs that they should tell everyone later. The chicks imprint on Kotaro, trailing him as the kids gawk. Taka whines that it's not fair, and Kotaro urges them to grab the chicks, sending them scattering in a chaotic chase. Ryu asks Yuzeta for help, but one chick darts toward the window where a cat lurks. The cat pounces, but Kotaro shields the chick just in time. Hayato snatches the cat, scolding everyone to close the window next time. Ryu pats Kotaro's head, saying he's a good boy. Kotaro beams, cradling the chick, and Ryu walks off with Kotaro and the chicks trotting behind him. Yuzeta feels homesick and miserable, so he calls Ryu. Taka jumps around begging to talk while Kotaro listens quietly. Yuzega tells Ryu that he can't come in today and that Seikowa will take his place. Suddenly, Seikowa shows up, surprising Ryu. Seikowa promises to do his best with the kids so Ryu can focus on Midori. He even brings a book called Now That You're a Mommy. Kotaro tugs on Seikowa's pants in support and Seikowa is touched. Shizuka reminds Taka to behave and Ryu tells Kotaro to be good. As more kids arrive, they cheer, excited to see Butler Guy. Ryu straps Midori onto Seikowa and he starts playing drums to entertain her. The kids swarm around him thrilled. Ryu explains that Usaida is sick, so Seikowa is here today. Taian is excited, and the twins clamor to play. Taka scoffs, saying he doesn't need Usaida and sneezes. Ryu thanks Seikowa and leaves, while the kids wave goodbye. Now alone, Seikowa hesitates as the kids keep their distance. Kotaro places a reassuring hand on him. Encouraged, Seikowa bows dramatically and asks for their support. However, the kids misunderstand and think they're in charge, immediately driving him off to teach him games. Meanwhile, Usaida lies in bed, imagining the kids crying without him. Kotaro holds some books looking sad. Just as Usaida falls asleep, his phone rings. It's Seikowa, but the call cuts off after mentioning an emergency with Midori. Usaida tries to call back, but the phone is dead. Panic sets in. 10 minutes earlier, Midori's diaper leaks onto Seikowa. He asks for a change and the kids scramble. Kirin rushes for diapers while Taka grabs wipes. Seikowa warns them not to, but they collide, soaking everything. Hin cries that it's Taka's fault and Taka protests. Midori wails and the twins join in. Kotaro stays calm as Seikowa quickly changes Midori's diaper and cleans her up. Meanwhile, Ryu's class jogs. Usaida collapses, worried about Midori. Ryu and Hayato help him to the daycare only to find that Midori is fine. Relieved, Usaida tries to leave, but Midori tugs on his pants. Seikowa says she missed him. Then Midori calls Usaida's name, her first word. Usaida blushes and Ryu is surprised. The next day, Yukari pouts, saying Midori should have said Mama first. Nearby, Yuki sneaks into the daycare, claiming she's looking for her ball, but secretly watches Ryu. Takuma notices Yuki hiding. As Ryu looks outside, Inamata appears and asks why Yuki is behind the bushes. Yuki stammers, saying she was just looking for her ball. Inamata smirks and calls her out on lying. Yuki finally admits that she struggles with kids. Just then, the daycare window opens and the children peek out. Inamata takes charge, pulling Yuki inside and telling her she'll need this skill someday. Yuki flushes, feeling embarrassed. Inside, the kids swarm Yuki, asks for her name, but before she can answer, they all start introducing themselves. Ryu laughs and says that they like her. Kirin jumps into her arms, saying, like mommy. The other children reach for her, but Ryu and Inamata step in to stop them. Usaida suggests a walk, and the kids cheer, pairing up. Fan clings to Inamata while Taka grumbles as Usaida holds his hand. Ryu takes the twins and Yuki hesitantly offers her hand to Kotaro. He takes it silently and Yuki's heart warms. She remembers how kids used to bully her, but Kotaro seems different. Noticing his downcast expression, Yuki assumes he's crying and pulls out a handkerchief. But she recoils when she sees it's just a runny nose. Taka tries to wipe it with her skirt, but Ryu intervenes. Kirin then drops bugs into Yuki's hand, shocking her so much that she faints. She thinks she'll never be like Ryu or Inamata. Yuki wakes up in the nurse's office and Ryu checks on her. She murmurs, asking if he carried her. He admits that Usaida did. When Yuki apologizes for struggling with kids, Ryu reassures her that nobody likes gross stuff, but he's just gotten used to it. Usaida opens the window, and the kids want to apologize. Kirin offers her flowers, asking if they're scary. Touched, Yuki smiles and asks about Inamata. Ryu says she left and asked him to apologize for pushing Yuki. Yuki runs after Inamata, catching her mid-self-reproach and hugs her from behind. Yuki whispers a thank you and Inamata blushes, feeling warmth in her chest. Ryu's friend calls and invites him to a movie, but Ryu declines because he has to watch Kotaro. Seikowa appears and says he will take care of Kotaro so Ryu can go. As Ryu leaves, he thanks Seikowa for watching his brother and tells Kotaro to behave. Kotaro nods. Seikowa promises to protect Kotaro with his life and holds Kotaro's hand to wave goodbye. After Ryu leaves, Kotaro feels sad. Seikowa notices this and asks if Kotaro wants snacks, but Kotaro shakes his head. So Seikowa tries something else. He picks a cat-like plant from a pot and waves it in front of Kotaro. Kotaro lights up and grabs the plant with joy. Meanwhile, Ryu beats his friends. Hayato shows up with a bite mark and Ryu asks if he was with a girl. Hayato explains that his brother bit him, so he hit him back. Suddenly, zombies appear and a girl screams and runs. Ryu and his friends watch in fear, except for Ryu and Hayato, who stay calm. Back at the mansion, Seikowa throws a ball and Kotaro chases it. He knocks the ball forward and runs after it. Turning the corner, Seikowa calls out, telling Kotaro not to go too far. Kotaro ends up in a room with an open window. The wind blows the curtain and flips through the pages of a book. Seikowa picks up the ball and says this library belonged to the chairwoman's late son and wife. He remembers the son once asking him to come and read a joke book before he died because he wanted to see Seikowa laugh. Seikowa also remembers the chairwoman telling him to stop cleaning the unused library, but later she aired it out for those who would never return. As Kotaro calls to him, Seikowa picks up a book and holds it out. Kotaro nods and Seikowa offers to read it. Meanwhile, the chairwoman exits her car and heads to the mansion. She sees her son and wife in the library and realizes Seikowa is the one reading to Kotaro. Later that evening, Ryu waves goodbye to his friends and runs home. He finds Seikowa and Kotaro waiting at the door. When it opens, Kotaro runs up and hugs his brother. Seikowa says Kotaro was eager to see him, so they waited. Kotaro clings to Ryu. Ryu thanks Seikowa and pulls out a zombie keychain, showing it to Kotaro. Kotaro calls it a zombie. Ryu wonders if Seikowa would like the keychain, but Seikowa smiles and says thanks to both of them for making his day great. Just then, the chairwoman arrives and tells Seikowa to prepare dinner. As Seikowa leaves, the chairwoman says Ryu will help. Ryu asks what games they played and Seikowa just waves his hand, saying it was the usual. Kotaro shows Ryu his ball. As December begins, the city shifts into Christmas mode. Kotaro becomes obsessed with Santa, stopping every time he sees one. A Santa on the street gets nervous under Kotaro's stare and mistakes him for a guy walking a dog. Ryu collapses from exhaustion at daycare and tells Yuseda everything. Yuseda says that's why Ryu is late. Kotaro stares at a gambling flyer and Yuseda tells him he's too young for that. Ryu says Kotaro is probably just looking at the Santa on the flyer. Taka runs over and says he met a super cool Santa in the toy section. Yuseda teases that Santa only comes to good boys and Taka tears up saying he's good. Yuseda points out that Taka doesn't eat broccoli. Taka says he doesn't like broccoli. Yuseda responds that this is why Santa won't come. Taka promises to eat broccoli. Before they can continue, Hayato hits Yuseda, blaming him for making his brother cry. Taka asks if Santa will come to their house. Ryu almost says no but stops and tells Taka not to crush his dream. Kotaro walks over, tugs on Taka's sweater, pats him, and says he's a good boy. Taka asks again and Kotaro nods. On December 18th, Karen says she told Santa her wish, but it's a secret. Her dad grins and warns Ryu not to fall for her. The next day, Yuseda yawns and spots Yusakawa and Yuki. On the 20th, the twins tell Ryu they asked Santa to keep them together forever. They cry and beg Ryu to help pick a gift. On the 21st, Yukari holds Midori and says she made a Santa outfit for Midori's dad. Ryu imagines it and says the outfit will be perfect. Midori smiles. Later, while changing, Ryu considers dressing as Santa because of his belly. He asks himself what he's doing. Ryu, flustered, says he's trying to look like Santa. Yusakawa thinks he's pretending to be pregnant. Yuki peeks in, and Kotaro scolds her, telling her not to peek. A boy asks if Ryu is being Santa for his brother. Another boy asks if it's his dad's job. His friend elbows him, saying Ryu doesn't have parents. He apologizes. Ryu says he wants to be Santa because Kotaro is excited. A boy cries and says Ryu is the best big brother. Another sniffles. They suggest ordering a suit, but Ryu's phone is broken. They say Ryu should ask the chairwoman, but Ryu wants to buy her a gift. He overhears this and skips the gym to see her. On Christmas Eve, Ryu and Kotaro admire the Christmas tree. Seikowa serves a big feast. Ryu says it's too much for just them, but Seikowa explains the chairwoman is working. Kotaro droops and Seikowa also has work to do and leaves. Kotaro clings to Ryu's sleeve. Ryu hugs him and says he's here and they should eat. Santa is coming soon. Kotaro gets excited. He remembers the Santa costume his friends got him and tells Ryu he needs to go to the bathroom. But as Kotaro walks off, he quietly follows Ryu. Ryu turns around, surprised to see him. He grabs the costume and steps into the bathroom to change. However, when Ryu enters the bathroom, he finds Kotaro already there, making it difficult to transform into Santa. Suddenly, the doorbell rings. Kotaro's eyes sparkle. He shouts that Santa is here. As Ryu opens the door, everyone arrives, shouting Merry Christmas. Ryu blushes and Kotaro beams with joy. The chairwoman approaches and taps Ryu's head with a present. She tells him she dislikes children who never grow up, handing him the gift. Ryu accepts it quietly. The room fills with joy as parents, kids, and friends smile. But Kotaro is the happiest of all. It's revealed that Hayato told the chairwoman about Ryu's broken phone, so she gave him a new one. Everyone gathers and counts down. They all cheer Merry Christmas as the photo is taken. At dinner, the chairwoman asks Ryu if he has been studying for midterms. Ryu admits he plans to start after putting Kotaro to bed. Disappointed, the chairwoman insists he focuses completely on studying and assigns Seikowa to watch over Ryu's daycare duties. Ryu is not allowed to ask about Kotaro. He agrees, and Seikowa, honored, tells Kotaro to say goodbye. The chairwoman scolds Seikowa for being overly dramatic and pushes Ryu to start studying. Ryu explains to Kotaro that they will spend less time together, and Kotaro promises to work hard as well. The next day, Uzeda arrives at daycare and greets Ryu and Kotaro. However, he notices Seikowa instead. After learning that Ryu is studying, Uzeda sees Kotaro looking tense. Kotaro explains with some help that he pinky promised to work hard too, although Uzeda isn't sure what that means. Ryu finishes an assignment in class and almost heads to daycare, but remembers his promise to the chairwoman. He wonders what grades will be good enough. Hayato asks if Ryu is okay, and Ryu explains that Seikowa is covering so they can study. Hayato declines Ryu's invitation to study, until a message from his mom threatens to destroy his favorite baseball DVD if he fails. At daycare, Takuma and Kazuma notice Kotaro's determination. Uzeda suggests that they study like Ryu to surprise him. The kids, except Taka, eagerly agree to learn hiragana. Taka asks if studying will bring Ryu back sooner. Seikowa explains that Ryu will return when his studies are done, but there is no pressure to study. Motivated by Kotaro, Taka decides to help him learn. After the kids leave, Seikowa wakes Kotaro, telling him it's time to go home. Ryu feels lonely but continues focusing on his studies, knowing he is preparing for the real world. He hopes Kotaro will grow up to be independent too. Ryu spends days studying with friends while Kotaro practices writing at daycare. However, the other children lose interest in writing. The exam days pass, and Ryu declines to join the Jubilee to reunite with the daycare kids. Kotaro excitedly shows Ryu the progress he's made in writing his name. Uzeda shares how Kotaro struggled but worked hard during their time apart. The other kids claim to have written Ryu's name, but Uzeda corrects them. Ryu's teacher congratulates him for scoring the highest on his exams, which he attributes to Seikowa and the chairwoman's support. At daycare, Ryu asks Uzeda about Seikowa's favorite food, intending to cook for him as a thank you. Kirin ties Ryu's hair, and Uzeda jokes about cooking like a Mother's Day gesture. Kotaro proudly shows Ryu his writing again, and Ryu encourages him to write his name next time. Uzeda points out that all the kids have written Ryu's name on their papers. Uzeda then asks Kotaro about his favorite thing, and Kotaro smiles, replying, Nai-chan. Ryu, wanting to know Seikowa's favorite food, unintentionally makes Kotaro sad. He quickly apologizes, and the other children jump on Ryu, causing him to fall back. To Ryu's surprise, Seikowa cushions his fall and says he loves him too. Seikowa had overheard Kotaro's response and decided to express his feelings. When asked about Seikowa's place in his heart, Kotaro points to him. Taka mispronounces food as eat alga, confusing Seikowa about his favorite food. Uzeda quickly clarifies that it is about favorite dishes. When Seikowa lists numerous French dishes, Ryu feels defeated, realizing he can't cook French food. However, Uzeda reminds him that the thought matters. Seikowa presents a feast of Ryu and Kotaro's favorite foods at dinner, surprising them. Ryu thanks Seikowa, and Kotaro smiles as they thank both Seikowa and the chairwoman for their support during the midterms. That night, Ryu dreams of the day he and Kotaro arrived at school. He wakes to find Kotaro sucking his finger, and Kotaro happily describes a dream of everyone eating together. Ryu realizes that Kotaro sees them as a family. Ryu decides to cook dinner for the chairwoman and Seikowa to show his gratitude, choosing curry instead of French cuisine. Seikowa jokingly calls the chairwoman father, which annoys her. Ryu and Kotaro shop for seafood and prepare the meal. At dinner, the chairwoman praises Ryu's curry, and Seikowa admits it is delicious, revealing his favorite food is curry. Ryu feels embarrassed but happy. The next day, the daycare children ask for a taste, but Ryu shyly calls it regular curry. The chairwoman, acting as queen, asks Seikowa who is the fairest. Seikowa replies that beauty is subjective, but suggests sharing his preferences. The chairwoman demands an answer, and Ryu, the huntsman, tells her to ask something more meaningful. The chairwoman then asks Seikowa who is the brightest, and he answers Snow White, played by Inamata, who excels in studying. The chairwoman orders Ryu to take Snow White out of the castle. Inamata protests, saying she must study for the country's future. The children, dressed in hats, jump out from the bushes, surprising Inamata. Kotaro hugs Ryu, and Uzeda explains they have come to get him. Inamata is annoyed by the children, calling them rude. Ryu introduces them as the Seven Dwarves. Inamata points out that there are only 6 children, making the children cry. Ryu calms them, and Inamata decides to return to the castle. Ryu tries to convince her that the children will warm up to her, but she runs off, claiming she doesn't belong as the princess. She throws her dress at Ryu before leaving. Ryu chases after her, leaving Yusada to look after the children. Inamata, feeling down, is offered an apple by Yayoi. She considers eating it, but Hayato, dressed as a horse, stops her and shows her a message from Ryu. The message says that the children cried when she left and wanted her back. Touched, Inamata returns, believing she's upset them. The children apologize and Inamata denies crying, though they all cry. The chairwoman and Seikawa watch, with Seikawa assuring that there is still a happy ending. Ryu tries to calm the children as Yusada watches, amused.